Something happened at Minicamp in Cleveland this week that I haven't been able to stop thinking about, and I want to be precise about why, because the easy version of this story is just about one quarterback having a bad day and another having a good one, and that framing misses what actually happened. What I watched wasn't a practice performance in the way that phrase usually gets used. It was a verdict being delivered in the language that football people use when they're not speaking for public consumption. The language of reps and reads and ball placement. The language that coaches fluent in real evaluation read instantly and remember permanently long after the specific practice has faded from public conversation. Let me start with Dillon Gabriel, because intellectual honesty requires giving him fair examination before I tell you what it ultimately means. He's not without ability. He's not a player who stumbled onto an NFL roster through favorable circumstance or organizational charity, but there is a specific moment in every serious quarterback evaluation where talent either confirms itself under real competitive pressure or gets exposed by it. What I watched Gabriel go through at this minicamp was firmly in the second category, and I want to walk through the specific evidence rather than summarizing it. The throw I keep returning to happened during 7-on-7 work. He sets up, works through his progression, identifies his receiver, and releases the ball. From the moment it leaves his hand, you can already feel what's about to happen. The ball hangs. It doesn't arrive with any conviction or velocity or the kind of physical authority that separates an NFL throw from an educated guess. A defender tracks it, catches it like it was a routine return, and that's the rep. 2.5 seconds of football that communicated more about where Gabriel is right now than any depth chart update or insider report could convey in 1,000 words. The numbers from that session are not ambiguous. 3 completions on 6 attempts. 2 interceptions in a period specifically designed to evaluate rhythm and decision-making in a controlled, repeatable environment. You can extend reasonable analytical charity to a quarterback on a lot of things. A receiver running the wrong route, a defensive back making a spectacular play, field conditions that distorted the execution. But when half your throws either fall incomplete or get turned over in a controlled evaluation setting, you are not dealing with bad luck. You are dealing with a quarterback whose accuracy, arm confidence, and processing speed have reached a point where the football itself is communicating the problem more clearly than any coaching staff conversation could. The number that genuinely got under my skin, though, wasn't from 7-on-7. It was from 11-on-11. Gabriel had already been through the difficulty of the earlier period. He had every reason to bring competitive urgency into the full team setting, some form of response that at least complicated the narrative. Instead, he threw an interception to a tryout player, not a veteran corner with years of NFL experience, not a drafted athlete the organization invested capital in acquiring, a player who drove to that facility with nothing but a hope and a phone call that got returned. And Gabriel handed him the kind of rep that gets discussed in film rooms and referenced in coaching conversations long after the practice itself has been forgotten. Context matters enormously in NFL evaluation. Not all interceptions carry the same weight. That one carries weight that is going to follow him into every subsequent evaluation conversation this offseason. Then the press conference happened. Gabriel was asked a simple question: where did you spend your offseason? And I want you to think carefully about what that question is actually asking beneath the surface. It's asking, did you understand the magnitude of what was in front of you? Did you treat this offseason like the most consequential professional stretch of your career? Or did you treat it like a rest period between organizational chapters? His answer was 4 words. I was in places. That's it. No reference to mechanical work. No mention of time spent learning this specific offense. No coaching conversations, no film sessions, no preparation framework articulated. Just a vague acknowledgement of having occupied geographic locations during the relevant period. I've thought about those 4 words more than they probably deserve at this point, and I keep arriving at the same uncomfortable place. There are only 2 real explanations for that answer. Either Gabriel doesn't fully grasp how precarious his situation actually is, which represents a level of situational unawareness that is genuinely alarming for a professional athlete in the middle of a real starting job competition with meaningful stakes, or he understands exactly where he stands and has adopted some form of deliberate detachment, playing it cool because he believes that presentation serves him better than visible urgency would. Both readings concern me. The first because this moment requires urgency and the absence of it is a real football problem. The second because Todd Monken did not come to Cleveland to award playing time to the quarterback with the most comfortable body language in a post-practice press conference. He came to find out who can run his offense at the highest level. That answer requires preparation that shows up on the field, and Gabriel's press conference suggested preparation that may not have happened in the ways this specific moment required. The follow-up question about the playbook produced 30 seconds of structured nothing, smooth delivery, complete absence of genuine content. He talked about how different players learn differently, about football being an ongoing journey, about conceptual similarities between offensive systems. It was the verbal equivalent of that interception, technically formatted, substantively empty. When a quarterback has genuinely lived inside a new system, when he has spent real hours developing actual opinions about its concepts and its demands, the answers have texture. They have specificity. They have the quality of someone who formed a personal relationship with the material over months of serious engagement. Gabriel's answer had none of that. It had the quality of someone who knows what the right answer sounds like without having done the work that produces it naturally. That distinction is audible to anyone listening carefully. Now let me talk about what was happening on the other side of that practice field, because while all of this was unfolding with Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders was doing something that deserves to be framed on its own terms, rather than purely as a contrast. This was not passive accumulation of benefit from someone else's bad day. This was deliberate preparation colliding with genuine competitive opportunity, and the result was unmistakable to anyone watching with honest, unbiased eyes. Shedeur ran the first-team offense from the beginning of practice, and when I say ran it, I mean he operated inside it with the command of a quarterback who has already done the conceptual work before arriving on the field, not a quarterback who is doing the conceptual work in real time under pressure. The distinction between those two things is visible from the sideline to anyone who knows what to look for. It's in the feet, whether they're aligned with the eyes before the snap, indicating that the processing happened ahead of the play rather than during it. It's in the trigger, whether the release comes from a decisive read or from the kind of hesitation that means the quarterback is still working through what the coverage is showing him. It's in the weight behind the throw, whether the ball arrives with the conviction that makes defensive backs calculate rather than gamble. Shedeur was operating entirely in the first category across the session. He wasn't thinking about the offense, he was running it. That distinction is enormous, and it was visible to everyone present. His press conference was the direct contrast that would be dishonest to gloss over or minimize. When he talked about his offseason, it wasn't vague and it wasn't performed. He referenced specific mechanical adjustments he had worked on. He described conversations with the coaching staff about how this offense attacks specific coverage families. He talked about what he is still working to master and what clicked for him immediately upon engagement. He talked about it the way you talk about something that genuinely consumed you, something you poured yourself into because the opportunity it represented was not going to wait around while you decided how seriously to take it. That kind of specificity cannot be rehearsed. You cannot manufacture the texture of someone who actually did the hours. It comes from the hours themselves. And Shedeur clearly put in those hours in ways that showed up when the evaluation environment was finally real and clean and unmediated. Here is the part of this story I keep circling back to, and I think it carries the most weight if you have been following this situation with any real consistency. Shadur Sanders spent last season in an environment that was compromised before he ever walked through the door. His reps were managed by a coaching staff that had quietly committed its organizational credibility to a different direction. His development was shaped by factors that had everything to do with organizational dynamics and nothing to do with who was actually throwing the ball with the most authority and command on any given day. He absorbed all of that. He went through it without breaking publicly, without becoming visibly bitter in ways that would have been completely understandable, without letting the circumstance become the defining story of what he was as a player. And then Todd Monken arrived with a genuinely clean evaluative framework that asked a single question with no predetermined answer attached to it, and Shedeur was ready to answer it. That kind of resilience is rarer than talent, and I don't think it gets credited properly in most quarterback evaluation conversations because it's harder to quantify than completion percentage or arm strength. But it shows up in the moments that matter most, in the practices where the evaluation is genuinely real, in the press conferences where the preparation either produced authentic answers or it didn't, in the competitive urgency of a player who has been waiting for a genuine opportunity and recognizes it immediately when it finally arrives. What showed up at that minicamp was the product of a player who converted last year's difficult experience into something that made him better and more prepared, rather than something that made him smaller and more guarded. That is not a minor thing. That is a major thing, and it deserves to be named directly. What Monken's presence in Cleveland removes from the organizational equation is the thing that makes this evaluation meaningful in ways that last season's wasn't. Under a different staff, Cleveland was the kind of organization where managed competition could coexist comfortably alongside quietly predetermined outcomes, where the appearance of an open evaluation could run parallel to rep distributions already shaped by factors disconnected from who was performing best in competitive reps on any given day. Monken's entire professional identity is organized around a different question. Who gives us the best chance to win? That question doesn't have a political answer. It doesn't have a loyalty answer or a relationship answer or a contract investment answer. It has a film room answer and a practice field answer. And both of those answers, as of this minicamp, pointed in the same direction with the same clarity. I want to acknowledge what this means for the Cleveland fan base specifically, because that community has absorbed a level of quarterback disappointment that deserves to be named directly, rather than treated as background context everyone already understands. This is not a market that has simply had bad luck at the most important position in team sports. This is a market that has been serially failed at that position for a generation. The names changed, the systems changed, the coordinators and the draft picks and the organizational philosophies changed. The number representing the various players who have started at quarterback for this franchise since 1999 kept growing year after year, and the result was, with near total consistency, the same painful pattern. False dawns, promising springs that collapsed into difficult Novembers, quarterbacks who looked like answers in April and felt like open questions before the season ended. The fan base learned, reasonably and painfully, not to trust what the spring shows them, because the spring had told them things that turned out not to be true so many times that protective skepticism became the only rational response available. What I want to say to those fans, as clearly as I can say it, is that what happened at this minicamp was not spring optimism. It was not the kind of performance that emerges from a controlled walkthrough environment where the defense isn't genuinely competing and the conditions are manufactured to make everyone look encouraging. This was a real evaluation under a coaching staff with nothing invested in any particular outcome, and one quarterback stood in the middle of it and performed like someone who belongs at the front of this franchise. That is different from what the spring has historically produced in Cleveland. The difference is real, and it's worth saying out loud rather than hedging it into something smaller. The formal announcements will arrive when organizations decide to make them official. Depth charts will be published and press conferences will be scheduled and careful language will be deployed, and all of the institutional apparatus of how these decisions get communicated publicly will run its course in the way it always does. But I want to be honest about what I think is already true, independent of when the official communication arrives. The Cleveland Browns have found their quarterback, not through a dramatic blockbuster move or a national headline moment, through something quieter and more durable. A genuine competition conducted under a genuine evaluator, producing a genuine answer that everyone present could see clearly. The practice field already delivered the verdict. The film room already confirmed it. What happened in Cleveland this week wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't close. And it isn't going to be reversed by a few better reps in the next session or more polished answers in the next press conference. The football told the truth. It almost always does. And this time, the truth pointed clearly and unmistakably at Shedeur Sanders.